That's it. We quit. No more Monsters, Mayhem, Mysteries, or any other M words.
You ruined M. Come on, guys, you can't quit the gang. It's the gang, as in the gang, also the gang.
Yeah, don't you see? It's us. We're all us. Without you, we're not us. Agreed.
The gang's all here, they're on the case, and there's no ghost that they wouldn't face, 'cause they dig it, Scooby-Doo. Yeah, they dig it, Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo.
Hey gang, and welcome to an all-new episode of a podcast named Scooby-Doo Extra. If you've previously enjoyed one of the extra episodes, then you know what's going on and no introduction is needed. If this is your first time checking it out, just a little bit of background. The whole point of the extra episodes is to create some added value content where there is none. Warner Brothers doesn't really do a great job of supporting their Scooby-Doo releases with any kind of bonus features. The straight-to-video movies, the series DVD releases, a DVD or Blu-ray, they throw a couple of old episodes on there, but there's no making-of documentaries, there's no audio commentaries, there's no real look at the making of these shows or movies. And for a franchise that's 50 years old, for a property that is part of animation history, I think this is a terrible thing. So I find myself in the position where I have access to creatives. I'm doing interviews on the regular episodes of the show, and being a feature fiend myself, I decided to give those creatives the opportunity to come on one of these extra episodes, do a commentary for one of the shows that they've worked on, and give you guys an opportunity to have a behind-the-scenes peek at the production of these shows, these episodes. And on this installment of Extra, we have a returning guest. A good friend of the show, Jon Colton Barry, has come back to talk about one of the episodes he wrote for Season 2 of Be Cool Scooby-Doo, the show that he was story editor on. It's the 4th episode in, I was going to say production order, but I'm not actually sure what the production order was. It was the 4th episode released, came out February 14th, 2017. It's called How to Train Your Coward. It was written by Jon and directed by Jeff Mendikow. It's one of my favorite episodes from Season 2, and when I suggested it to Jon, he thought that was a great one to come on and do. But Jon didn't want to do the commentary himself this time around. He wanted another voice on the track, and with some cajoling, he convinced me to come on and do it with him. So Jon talks about the making of the episode. I'm asking questions about the making of the episode. Before we start, actually, we do a bit of a conversation. Jon gives some background on the origins of How to Train Your Coward, and then we do a little debrief after the 20-odd minutes of the episode, so be sure to stick around for that. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add, so without further ado, I'm going to let you get to the commentary. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I had a lot of fun editing it. So here we go. Isolated episode commentary with Jon Colton Barry and myself for How to Train Your Coward. We'll see you on the other side. Hey gang, we are welcoming back to the show story editor and writer of Be Cool Scooby-Doo and friend of the podcast, Jon Colton Barry. Jon, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Mike. It is great to be back.
Jon is here to do a commentary on another one of the episodes from Be Cool Scooby-Doo. This was a Season 2 episode called How to Train Your Coward, which Jon wrote.
I did. It's true. It was one that Zach and I were both very interested in the concept, just because when we started the show, we ran into this problem immediately. Shaggy and Scooby, who is everyone's favorite characters, really, in Scooby-Doo traditionally, you know, as I've said this before on this podcast, you have two characters who don't want to be in your show. They don't want to be in scary places and solve. They just want to eat, and you know. But why are they there? So that was really what the genesis of this particular episode was. Is what if Shaggy and Scooby finally say, you know what? Why are we here? We quit. basically they offered to train their replacements. This got lost a little bit in the drafts, but originally it was, they understood Fred's mystery-solving procedures. It had to do with having 5 people in a certain chemistry, and so they found replacements for them, and they were going to, on one mystery on-the-job training, have them fill in and take off and leave the gang.
Morley and Bumpy.
Morley and Bumpy, yeah. And Morley, by the way, we were thinking of personality types, and David Cross came to my mind as like, I think David Cross would be great in this part. And I think they designed Morley to actually sort of resemble David Cross a little bit, just because that idea was in their heads. But that was the idea of Morley and Bumpy.
And we will get more of that as we get into the actual commentary. But before we do that, we need to set up the videos. So however everybody seems to be, whatever your preference is for watching, whether you're watching it on optical media or digital media, get everything set up and get your counter set to zeros across the board. And then we're going to do a countdown. 3, 2, 1, play. And everyone's going to hit play. And then we'll start talking. So we'll give you a moment to pause the podcast and go do that.
You want to do some hold music for him, Mike?
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
One down and long and lovely, the girl from me beneath my goes walking.
Did you want to do the countdown, John?
No, I really don't have the technical skills for that.
All right, I'll take care of that. So if everybody's ready, timers to 0, counting down 3, 2, 1, play.
All right.
So have we seen like a real haunted mansion kind of scary house prior to this?
In the one with the Lutz beef jerky, the where there's a will, there's a wraith was before this, wasn't it?
Right, yes.
I mean that was pretty classic haunted housey, right?
I love this chicken guy.
This D. Bradley Baker is absolutely brilliant.
It's such a great contrast with the like bright primary colors of the chicken and the...
Yeah. It's a duck, Mike, please.
But he says... Oh, yes, he says quack.
Yeah, and this is kind of a running gag throughout Be Cool Scooby-Doo. A lot of them got cut, but whenever there's a kid's name, I always named him Braden. Because when we had our child, we're looking, names and all these Bradens, Aiden, Jadens, were all the most popular names, and we know all these, Bradens and Aidens, and so there's always, like you hear what he says here.
I'm in the wrong place. I managed to find the only house in America without a kid named Braden in it.
I love the reaction then. No way.
Yeah.
Now, there was another line in here about a repurposed Braden originally.
Yes. He's sort of saying like, I'm surprised because it's a trendy place. They have a repurposed coffin and they repurposed Braden. That was the gag here.
Now, is there any significance to the address of 682 Delgato Road?
No. It just sounded like an authentic address. As opposed to a made-up cartoon address, it just sounded like, that could be a real place, and it seemed weird, like this castle was on Delgado Road, like it just, instinct said that's the right words, And I love this starting at a particular point in a Scooby-Doo episode that everyone understands, during the bait and the trap part.
This guy always reminded me of Solomon Grundy from DC Comics. Was there any...
Totally. No, he was just supposed to be a zombie-like character. This was the design they came up with. Hey, it works great,
This is also a particularly violent moment with Scooby and Shaggy.
In the script, it was very clear that it should be very slapsticky and silly. But what they do is dangerous, and I wanted to show that, like things could go wrong,
That was
You
a
know?
great cut there too, like right in the middle of the action.
You rule. And come on, guys, you can't quit the gang. It's the gang, as in the gang, also the gang.
There's a lot of like heavy word humor here.
Does that surprise you? I mean, yeah. They probably cut every fourth line anyway. There was probably twice as many words in here to begin with.
Does that happen before the recording, or?
Sometimes, yeah, and sometimes we lose stuff in editing for time. Getting stuff down to time because they'll extend action sequences or. Originally, in Outline, there was more history with Morley and Bumpy. They had solved a mystery for them, so they were eager and grateful, and they wanted to help them. But then it was like we didn't need it, so they just pull them up out of nowhere, and it was just silly,
I love the and vice versa joke. That's so Marx Brothers.
Right, totally.
And a hard-boiled egg.
Yep. 2 hard-boiled eggs, yep.
Quiet little town. What do you guys do for excitement around here?
So originally there was also a sequence in here where Morley waves to Braden and wishes him a happy birthday.
Yes, we do. There was a lot of little callbacks and running stuff through this, where they're like, Morley first tells them like, well, now we need a mystery if we're going to train you, and he tells them about the castle. But instead, we decided to do this where they actually bump into the vampire, but they sort of end up at his place by mistake, which was a little odd to me. But
well, they were on Delgado Avenue.
yes. So yeah, we did do a callback where he yells "Happy Birthday" to Braden as they go.
There's always been rumors
Um,
that a vampire lives here.
So is that all stuff that just gets trimmed down for pacing as it goes?
Yeah, and it was also I think they wanted to get as much monster in as possible. So actually seeing the monster, at that particular time, usually on page 8, we have a monster run-in, usually with Shaggy and Scooby, and that scene sort of fulfilled that purpose, where they actually Sheriff Boone. This was a weird character.
Yes, it was. Is that Billy West?
You know what? I actually don't know. Probably.
I feel like Paco and the sheriff are Billy West.
Probably. I was not at this record.
No
But
Sriracha.
yeah, he did a great job finding this particular character because I wanted him to be sort of like adorable and cutesy, but not like flamboyantly like it was a bit of a tightrope, but I think he found it nicely.
There's a lot of interesting contrasts in this episode. Like the sheriff is such a big burly fellow, but he has that dainty voice, or the big Transylvanian castle in the regular town, or the hunchback
the cliche
sidekick named Paco.
Yeah. I mean that stuff's just fun to toss in there. In retrospect, because Paco so clearly is sinister, I'm not quite sure what I was thinking, because he's obviously in on it. He's obviously, I even have him say this joke, which the read's a little bit off on this, but it's supposed to be like, have you seen the vampires? A master? I mean, a vampire? He so obviously knows there's a vampire, and that's so unusual for us to have done. I'm not sure why we made that choice, but it's fun,
I think it works. So this is also really fascinating to me because, strangely, I didn't catch it the first time I watched it, but watching it again before the record, this episode breaks down so much. It totally deconstructs what a Scooby-Doo episode is.
Yes.
Through the eyes of Shaggy and Scooby.
Yeah, that and there was a lot more of that. There was a lot more of like this. Shaggy and Scooby did more translating Fred into English for them, like what Fred means by certain things when he says them, or what it means to Shaggy and Scooby. They would also like call out Velma and stuff, you know, like oh, you'll find Velma will have, you know, like these intellectual factoids at the wrong moment, you know, like they really did get it was a lot more meta, you know, for an episode that is still very, very meta. But yeah, it was fun playing with, you know, the self-awareness of Shaggy and Scooby.
Once it got to this scene, I was like, I have no idea where this is going to go.
Right. Yeah.
But I love where it does go.
What we call it, the haircut scene, this stuff was my favorite. I love Matthew Lillard's performance in this. The whole Vinny pencil thin. Yeah, Shaggy and Scooby breaking down how these scenes work was so much fun to write. This was great.
And I love the fact that Morley is there trying to, like, address the lack of logic to it.
Right.
Like, if you can convince him to do this thing, why don't you just convince him to leave?
Right, but I think that there's a rationale to it that ends up kind of making sense, you know?
Just Clara Bethabel.
Yeah, just Clara.
Bethabeth. Which is another recurring gag. The Bethabeth.
Yes.
From the Party Like It's 1899.
Yep. Oh, see, this is beautiful to me.
It's really interesting seeing just the vocal quality of Matthew's voice when he
Yeah.
stops doing the Shaggy. And he's
Yes.
just got that smooth lounge singer.
It's so good. And Jeff Mednicow directed this, and you know his comedy timing is always brilliant. When everybody is hitting it right, you know, like hitting on all cylinders together, it's just magic to watch in any show, you know.
That's a great gag.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I had so much fun with this scene. It probably went on for another couple minutes of them breaking it down, but you know, we had to get out eventually. And that was another thing, is that Morley and Bumpy had to sort of represent the normal person's reaction to this sort of thing. Like, there's vampire, like shouldn't we call the national, like isn't this horrible? Originally, there was a gag in here where Daphne sees that bag and goes, "It's my mother's purse," which I always liked. I just, you know. And that's a callback to the original discussions with Warner Brothers. They said Scooby-Doo is about fear, food, and flashlights. And so I had used that as sort of, you know, a breakdown for them.
Yeah, when I heard that, I loved that you got the 3 Fs in there.
Yep.
Actually made it a story point.
Yep. And if you'll notice also, Morley and Bumpy end up, you know, they're the ones who say the bag must be from his victims. They're the one who's making the conclusions, which Shaggy and Scooby never do. You know, so it is their interference and their ideas being thrown into the mix that throw the gang off. You know?
I love Old Man Oldman.
Yeah, Old Man Oldman.
So, what did he see?
Oh, wow. That's funny.
Yeah, Paco, I don't even know.
Where did the name Paco come from? Was that just...
It's just the worst possible name for that character. That was just it.
You saw what happened to us on our last mystery. Scoob and I got our butts handed to us. Gift wrapped.
I love stupid jokes. Like, it's like the headless Minotaur in The People versus Fred. Things like that just make me so happy.
So what purpose does it serve here to have Morley and Bumpy kind of taking charge of their roles after being so shaky on it?
It's to show the chemistry of the original gang and sort of how the dynamic actually works. That it does work, and having Morley and Bumpy take a more proactive interest in the mystery throws the gang off, throws off the delicate balance and chemistry of the gang. You know, it highlights the function Shaggy and Scooby actually serve in the gang, which is to be a reminder of the reality of the danger of certain situations, you know? And, you know, like to let everyone sort of do what they're supposed to do. They're accustomed to their roles.
I love the base of the vampire with all the smoky effects.
Yes.
It's actually such a simple design on the vampire that I think you can not pay as much attention to it. And
That the vampire himself?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And you don't
yeah.
see some of the like finer sort of design elements to it.
Yeah, it's nice though. I mean, you know, because it really is supposed to be very sort of classic. You know, and I'm glad that we went more Nosferatu than, you know, Bela Lugosi.
It also feeds into that classic, you know, the sheriff clearly does not have the body shape to fit.
yeah. We gave up on that concept. I mean, in Scream Madonna, we played with it the most, where the big fat manager guy is in that tiny little costume and it bursts out of it, you know. But yeah, that continues to be a little wink to the absurdity of the entire premise of, you know, Scooby-Doo anyway. And originally in this, Shaggy and Scooby were part of this romp and were sort of coaching Morley and Bumpy through a romp. Here's how you get through this, you know. But then we decided to have them actually walk out and quit. And Morley and Bumpy get, you know, captured in what they believe to be, you know, turned into vampires. So they really failed. I mean, it's a...
That line's originally a callback, is it not?
Well, it's Daphne, you know, is always the one who gets up and pumps them up, but they're all thrown off because Shaggy and Scooby are quitting, you know. They come back, but originally also Daphne tries a bunch of different du jours in this episode, but can't land on one because she's so thrown off by Shaggy and Scooby.
What other du jours was she trying?
She tries she was considering getting a temporary tattoo, but couldn't commit to it, so she got a temporary tattoo. I forget some of the other ones, but there were a few she cycled through.
That's one of the rare cases where Scooby says more than 5 or 4 words.
Yeah. Wait, which line?
When he says, "Yeah, like living the dream."
Oh, yeah, like living the... Yeah. That's Frank throwing in a yeah. In the script, I think it's living the dream. I was really anal about that.
Ever since you mentioned that, every episode, if I'm not actively, I'm subconsciously counting.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The comic timing, you mentioned Mendicow's timing, like, I just love it in this episode.
Oh yeah, he is an incredibly talented director, and and always plus the comedy. His acting is superb on the characters.
So is the idea here that Scooby is at the organ so that the vampire stops thinking it's Paco?
Yeah, I guess. I love this. Let me end this abomination, you know. Like, whoa, wait. The original thing was just to
Sorry,
have
I love how Paco's in his, like, spooky robe in the diner.
Right.
Continue.
The original ending had the vampire run down the stairs and just ram into the cage that dropped, trapping Morley and Bumpy, and getting knocked out, and then he's done. But so they wanted extra running around, so they added the organ stuff to it. I'm not sure how much that helped it. But it's fine. So that wasn't my thinking. So I'm not quite sure what they were thinking with that.
So there's a scene earlier on when they first come into the castle where they're walking towards the organ. Would that have been something that was added later to create continuity, or?
No, I think the organ was always there just to sort of add that, like, every cliche of a castle and a spooky thing, is there.
I love when Daphne says, "Who travels with gold?" Was it a difficult episode to write because you were deconstructing?
No, it wasn't. It was a lot of fun. It was almost. I wish it could have been an hour because there was so much, like I would have gone much deeper into the rabbit hole if I could have, It was what to leave out that was the problem, because once you have, the freedom to sort of do that, there's so much to do. But we were able to spread out little moments, people jumping on Velma's back and her running, like a lot of the tropes and stuff of Scooby-Doo, we were able to play with and explore, differently. All right, so I've got end credits running now. Do you?
I do as well. Yes.
Okay. But no, it was not a difficult episode. It was a really fun episode, and I was really glad they let us do it, and I was very, very pleased with it. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I think Matthew Lillard did a fantastic job with it. Frank, is always impeccable. Daphne and Velma got a little bit lost in the final edits and version of it, which is always a bummer because really the show is about the balance between all the characters, riffing off one another. But we added 2 more kind of main characters to this one. Yeah. So something's gonna get underserviced, and I'm okay with it. But no, I'm very, very pleased that we were allowed to do this one.
It's one of my favorites from season 2. Yeah. I don't really know what else to say about it. I always enjoy. There's a handful that are like, if I was going to make a list of the 10 episodes to kind of watch, like this would be one of the ones that was on there.
Yeah, I would say so too. I mean, most of the ones that I would say are probably from the last few of season 1 and all the rest from season 2. I think we got better at doing it. Everyone across the board just understood the show better and knew what to do better as we went along, and so once the learning curve is over, then you're just playing, then you're just having fun with it. And this episode is one of those where you can just sort of feel that fun that everyone's having, to get to do this. That said, I would not I would not have and did not do a lot of episodes like that because I think it would get very tedious to be so deconstructive on, on everything.
Well, that sort of misses the point of it.
Yeah, and this one, it's its own special little episode that's unlike any other episode, and it does sort of explore, without being definitive, why Shaggy and Scooby are there when they clearly don't want to be there.
I like the fact that it's lovingly done too. It's not. There's no malice there. You're not pointing out how silly the formula is. You're embracing it and just kind of working your way through the finer points of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the show has this particular iteration of these characters, and we love these characters, But the question, I think is a very valid question still, why do Shaggy and Scooby continue to hang out with people who every single day, there was some dialogue that was
constantly endanger them.
yeah, there was some dialogue when they quit. Actually, I might have it here. I have an earlier draft of the script actually up. I was looking it over here, where when they're quitting, Shaggy and Scooby, Fred says, Shaggy's like, they're talking about like, oh, this is what it's all about, driving around, seeing the world and helping people and da-da-da. And Shaggy says, oh, we have no problem with the seeing the world or the solving the mystery parts, like it's the stuff in between those two. And Scooby says, running for our lives. And Shaggy says, good example, yes, literally having to run as fast as you are physically able, Scooby says, to keep being alive. Shaggy's like, that part, that we can do without, And I think it's a good point, like they have to run for their lives, all the time.
I don't know if I should cop to knowing this, but there's also the line where he says, I don't want to look back on my life and see that it ended next week or last week or something.
Right, yeah. I don't want to look back on my life. I don't want to look back at the end of my life and have that be next week or whatever, whatever it was. Yeah, there was something like that. So yeah, I mean, while those are just silly stuff we added, but we did originally dig a little bit deeper into the psyche involved, but I think all of that was implicit in it. I think it's clear why Shaggy and Scooby are having a problem with being in the gang in this episode.
Well, it is something you kind of touch on often because there is the trope of when the monster is chasing them, the monster always chases Scooby and Shaggy.
Yeah, and I don't know if in other series of Scooby-Doo, if that's always the case. We just made it be the case in this one and then turned it into our own trope and running gag. It felt true, so we went with it. But then it just became something that I was just having fun with, that it became like oh, come on, every single time, really. So the show sort of developed its own internal sort of tropes and running gags that some made it through, like that particular one. I think Daphne's mother was a much bigger presence in the scripts than she ever ended up being in the final versions that made it to the screen. Usually a lot of the mother lines got cut, and we were going to eventually deal with her mother, but because so much of that got cut, it didn't really seem like we had set it up properly anymore.
I think the best Daphne mother line that is still in the show is when she says that the outdoors is just a bathroom that's trying to kill you.
Giant bathroom that wants to kill you, yeah. Which is my personal feeling about nature, so.
Another valid question about this episode is Morley and Bumpy. Where did they end up? We last see them in the cage.
I'd like to think that their corpses are still there. I'd like to think that they died hungry and terrified. Maybe Morley died first and Bumpy fed off him for a while until really it just was bones and there was nothing left, and it was a painful, sad, horrible death for them.
I'm okay with this.
I assume that's what happened.
I'm sure someone will do some fanfic on it.
Yeah, I'm sure Warner Brothers will have a Morley and Bumpy series next, starring their ghosts or whatever. the reanimated corpses of Morley and Bumpy. I'm sorry, what's that?
I was just going to say, like, the strangest outcome of this would be to have Be Cool spawning a spin-off series.
I know. Wouldn't that be the oddest thing? Yes, particularly Morley and Bumpy. But yeah, that's How to Train Your Coward.
All right, well, let's leave the episode discussion at that. Thank you again so much, Jon, for joining us. You are so generous with your time. Everybody loves hearing your perspectives and the behind-the-scenes story of the story.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. It is always a pleasure to be here, and I always appreciate, your support of the show. And, it ended, a couple years now ago, but there's still interest. I get a lot of people, writing to me, tweeting to me, Facebook, messaging with questions and interests, and it is growing, day by day. So I'm happy to still talk about it if people are interested, and I'm proud of the work. I think Zach and I made a funny show, and and of course everyone else involved. It just started with me and Zach, and then it grew from there. And it didn't quite get the shot that it deserved to catch on with an audience. And that's happening slowly, ever so slowly, is perfectly fine with me. So, I appreciate the fact that you are still willing to discuss it and try to turn people onto it. I appreciate it.
Well, I know you've got a lot on your plate these days, but maybe you'll come back again another time and do another episode.
I would love to. Always a pleasure, my friend.
So there you have it. That was the isolated episode commentary for How to Train Your Coward with Be Cool Scooby-Doo story editor and writer Jon Colton Barry. I want to thank Jon once again for coming on the show and doing this. It's always such a treat when anyone comes on the show to do these commentaries, because we're not getting anything for them. They're taking their time out of their lives and their schedules, and we're doing this for you guys. We're doing this for those of us who love behind-the-scenes stuff and are looking for a little Scooby-Doo added value content, which currently doesn't exist. I'm just going to keep beating that dead horse. So thanks again, Jon, for coming on. Hopefully he will come back and do another episode with us sometime. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed listening, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. As always, you can contact the show either through Facebook or Twitter at a podcast named Scooby-Doo, or at Scooby-Doocast on Twitter. We're also on Instagram and have a WordPress blog, where now with the sad news of Scooby Apocalypse ending, I'm thinking about getting a little bit more diligent with my reviews of the issues, and maybe just kind of doing like a retrospective move through the series. So that will probably be on the scoobydoocast.wordpress.com site. So I'll announce that on the Twitter and the Facebook, and you guys will be able to hear about it and follow along as that goes. If you stream or download the show off of iTunes, I'd really appreciate it if while you're there you rated and reviewed the show. It helps get the show noticed with the Apple algorithms, so that anybody who's not hearing the show who might be interested in the show is able to find the show. And also, word of mouth is a great way to spread the word about the show if you want to support the show in that way. Like and share on the social media, tell a friend, pass it around, the usual. So that's it for me. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for tuning in, for downloading. Love all you guys. Take care. And remember,
Like with this, we can rule the world!
Was that our goal?
Well, no. I wanted a sloppy Joe, but if you rule the world, you can probably get all the sloppy Joes you want.